Tupac kind of falls into my left arm.
A music icon killed in our streets.
I'm asking what happened, who shot you?
Fox 5 News investigates theories of revenge, corruption, and rap's most powerful.
It leads back to
Who Killed Tupac? Thursday on Fox 5 News at 10.
In 2016, I did an interview with Las Vegas Fox affiliate, and the journalist was Cyndi Lundberg. And she came and interviewed me in Los Angeles about the murder of Tupac. And this was February of 2016, after Russell Poole died in a meeting with the sheriffs. That interview was scrubbed from the internet. I reached out to the Fox affiliate and tried to get a copy of it, and they denied me, saying that that thing was now archived and no longer available. Why would you get rid of that interview? But the interview is never gone for good from the internet. And so, in kind of bits and pieces, I was able to get it from archive.com. So that interview is gone, swept away, because they were reached out to most likely by Metro Las Vegas police, and they wanted that thing gone because it pointed to police. It pointed really to Reggie. But in that interview, they were afraid to say Reggie's name. So what I had said in the interview about Reggie being involved was to mirror what Russell Poole had said in the Jeff Weiss article, where Russell Poole was interviewed, and he was saying that it was Sharitha and it was Reggie Wright Jr. that were behind trying to topple Death Row Records and kill Suge and Tupac that night. So with this video having aired on a Fox affiliate in Las Vegas, Keefe-D's counsel, and I still think that they're not too bright, but I'm going to help them out here. They need to request discovery of the prosecutors in this case. They need to request discovery and ask what was done to investigate Reggie Wright Jr.'s role in the murder of Tupac that appears in the Jeff Weiss article, and that also appeared in the segment of the Fox News affiliate in Las Vegas. That aired in all of Las Vegas. It was a very popular segment. And what did Metro Police do to investigate Reggie Wright Jr.'s role in that murder? And why then would they allow him to be the key witness in the grand jury if they had fully investigated Reggie Wright Jr.? Why was that even allowed? And in fact, that's the predicate for the case. This case would have never been brought without Reggie Wright Jr.'s testimony. And they knew that Reggie Wright Jr. was a suspect even back then. If they'd have asked Cyndi Lundberg, she would have told them. They could have asked her for the raw footage in which I actually say Reggie's name. The Jeff Weiss article was written in 2015, and that interviewed Russell Poole, and he said, hey, I know who killed Tupac, and it was Reggie and Sharitha that were conspiring to kill Tupac. So they get to ask, what was done to investigate this? And why was he then used as a predicate for Keefe-D being indicted and held over for trial? They have to ask that question, and it must be answered by the prosecution. That is, if these attorneys are really trying to help Keefe-D, which they may not be. They may actually be assigned to just kind of cover this whole thing up. And that's probably why they haven't reached out to me. Dan Long, who was one of the original bike cops, he was in charge of the investigation, and I actually spoke to him while Russell Poole was alive. He had no interest in speaking to Russell Poole. He had no interest in the confession letter. The only thing he wanted to do was find out where the gun was. And if you remember in the Chris Blatchford statement, That gun was attempted to be dropped off at Fox News in Los Angeles and was refused. So Dan Long thought maybe I knew where the gun was, which tends to then refute the whole gun theory that it was found in the backyard of an old residence of Orlando Anderson, which is a bunch of bullshit. So if Dan Long was still looking for that gun, then that means the Compton gun that was found is just a bunch of motherfucking bullshit. So, the other questions that the prosecution should be asked is, did Las Vegas Metro Police investigate the confession letter in 1998 when it was handed to them by Chris Blatchford, who says they refused? They did not want the confession letter. He also says he tried to hand it to LAPD, who also did not want the confession letter back in 1998. So it goes back into his file to be saved until I get a copy of it in 2014. Did Las Vegas Metro Police investigate the confession letter in 2014? In 2015? In 2016? Las Vegas Metro Police has a responsibility to provide exculpatory evidence to Keefe-D's defense. They must show their work, but they have to be asked if they actually investigated the confession letter in those years, because that would have showed them that there was no predicate to be able to charge Keefe-D. And this is discovery that needs to be done in order to help Keefe-D's defense. The Jeff Weiss article that points to corrupt LAPD cops, the Rampart scandal cops, that points to the conspiracy by Reggie Wright Jr. and Sharitha, that points to what Shug told us. Shug told us what? He said Reggie and Sharitha and Perez were great friends, and all those three together tried to plot. They wanted the ownership of my record label. And that's what we got to be looking for.
Tupac kind of falls into my left arm.
A music icon killed in our streets.
I'm asking what happened, who shot you?
Fox 5 News investigates theories of revenge, corruption, and rap's most powerful.
It leads back to
Who Killed Tupac? Thursday on Fox 5 News at 10.
And we spoke to two head investigators on Tupac's murder. Here are their theories of the event.
I won't deny it, I'm a straight ride.
September 7th, 1996, Tupac Shakur, along with his associates from Death Row Records, are leaving a Mike Tyson fight at the MGM Hotel and Casino when they see Orlando Anderson, a known Southside Crip from Los Angeles. In this video from inside the MGM, Shakur, along with Suge Knight, can be seen kicking and stomping Anderson. Just after 11 p.m., Tupac, Suge Knight, and the rest of their entourage of about 6 cars were headed to a club. They were stopped here at the intersection of Koval and Flamingo. A white Cadillac pulled up alongside Knight's BMW and opened fire. Shakur was sitting in the passenger side and was hit multiple times. This is the last photo taken of Shakur the night of the shooting. He died 5 days later at UMC at the age of 25. 6 months later in Los Angeles, East Coast rapper Christopher Wallace, otherwise known as Notorious B.I.G., is gunned down leaving a party. LAPD detective Russell Poole is assigned the case and found the murder of Shakur and Wallace were connected.
Russell Poole was investigating this crime, and it kept leading to off-duty police officers. And he kept being told by management at the LA, hey, stop, you're investigating.
Poole was eventually taken off the case. He quit the force and sued the LAPD. Author Michael Carlin helped Poole publish multiple books about his findings.
I'm just calling to tell you, look over your shoulder.
And says Poole never stopped working on the murders.
Dave Demersion is the senior ADA at the district attorney's office. We started having these meetings, and Dave was like, I'm still just not interested, not feeling this case. We doubled our efforts. We came up with 45 Tupac murder facts. We handed that to him, and finally he said, I am very interested in this case now.
In September 2015, 19 years after Shakur's murder, Poole scores a meeting with investigators.
A man takes 2 billion heartbeats, and the last 2,000 of his heartbeats are in a meeting with the sheriffs talking about sheriff corruption, and he passes away in the meeting. I mean, it defies logic.
Carlin says Poole had uncovered evidence that those inside Death Row Records planned to kill Suge Knight to take over the label. Shakur was also a target because, according to Poole, he was planning to leave the label and take hundreds of unreleased songs with him. FBI documents and former LAPD officers confirmed Death Row Records employed multiple officers who worked security.
The motive is Death Row Records. Death Row Records was worth $500 million. And the reality is, cops were involved in the murder of Tupac. The reason this hasn't been solved is because it leads back to cops.
Fox 5 tried to contact the former Compton police officer who took over Death Row Records after the murder. He did not respond.
Profile unsolved cases
Right here in Las Vegas, exactly.
Incredible. Great work, Cyndi.
Yes, Cyndi. Thank you.
Several informants told investigators the white Cadillac used in the shooting of Tupac was rented. However, police were never able to track down the car. We also reached out to the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. They told us they couldn't comment because the investigation into the death of Tupac Shakur is still ongoing. Greg Kading, the LAPD officer we spoke to for this piece, has published a book and has a documentary about his findings. He was taken off the investigation after an internal review found him guilty of altering witness statements. We also talked to Tupac Shakur's cousin. He originally agreed to be part of Cyndi Lundeberg's investigation, then told us the family decided against it.
I believe that jail and all of that is for fighting and stuff like that is for jail and all of that. But I don't. I have never been the type of guy that go and put any type of work. Will never get no car and do nothing. I'm a reactor. I'm one that with you and that's going to react to things that happens. But yeah, I don't believe in being spontaneous at all. And so that's what I mean when I say I will orchestrate something. You know, if I want somebody to get slapped or something like that, we're going to put a plan together. You'll never get me being emotional like a bitch and spontaneous and taking penitentiary chances. No. You probably can slap me. And I always said, you slap me, you might get away with slapping me right then. But trust me, you're going to pay for that slap one day. And that's what I mean by that. So, yeah.
Now we need to check out another part of Michael Carlin's theory. Reggie Wright Jr. and the allegedly dirty cops who he and Suge Knight was bringing into the inner circle of Death Row.
You got a lot to cover up, y'all.
Freudian slip.
You got a lot to cover up.
We got a lot to cover up.
Well, who do you think killed Tupac?
I believe Orlando Anderson killed Tupac.
Are Sharitha and Reggie Wright Jr. telling the truth? Michael Carlin doesn't think so.
Reggie Wright Jr., the head of security for Right Way Security and Death Row, organized the personnel to plan the hit, and I believe police officers were a big part of the hit.
You got a lot to cover up, y'all.
Freudian slip.
You got a lot to cover up.
We got a lot to cover up.
So guys,
What's going on?
Greg Kading is out. His lawyer won't let him do it, so
we've been waiting around for Kading all day, and
yeah, and now
he's not
he's a
coming.
no-show.
Really, I wanted to talk to him because there's so much to ask him.
Yeah.
I wanted to go through an overview of the entire school play. If you've been following this story, you may be familiar with parts of it, and I'm not sure that you've ever had somebody explain the whole thing in one video, but I'd like to try today to explain it to you. Our story really begins with Snoop, who is caught up in a murder case, and it's the murder of Philip Waldemariam. Now, that murder goes to trial, but the first thing that happens when that murder happens is they call Suge Knight. Suge Knight calls David Kenner. The car goes missing. The guns go missing. They say the car's stolen. It turns up completely clean, swept, whatnot. Guns are now missing. But they do have shell casings. They do have bullets. That stuff is being kept at Pacific Division at LAPD. And so there's a effort to discredit the witnesses. There's an effort to intimidate the witnesses. The intimidation happens, and it's done by Compton PD working in conjunction with LAPD. They're showing up, and they are intimidating the witnesses. There's a woman who says she saw a gun in Snoop's hands, and Malik in the middle of the night goes to the warden and says he saw a gun in Snoop's hands, and he confesses. That gets suppressed at trial. The other thing that happens is the evidence that is sitting in the Pacific Division evidence locker goes missing. And that evidence was key in showing that there were two guns, because it was shell casings and bloody clothing. And it's stolen out of the evidence locker. How easy is it to steal evidence out of an evidence locker? Well, back then it was probably a little bit easier, but it's not so easy. It's inside of a police operation. So they enlist the help of the Rampart Scandal Police. And these are thieves. David Mack gets convicted for armed robbery at a bank, Bank of America, in near campus at USC. And he gets away with $726,000, gets to keep the money, doesn't have to give up his accomplices, does a percentage of his time, and he's out and gets to keep the money, doesn't have to turn it over. Rafael Perez, convicted of stealing evidence out of the evidence locker. So the thieves have been let into Death Row Records. And Reggie Wright Jr., Compton PD, Reggie Wright Sr., Compton PD, they're also somehow involved in all that. DAs are leaking details in the case. The civil trial gets moved up. Snoop gets acquitted. In the civil trial, they had to disclose who the witnesses were. And once they disclose who the witnesses are, those witnesses are no longer available at trial. Snoop gets acquitted. But Snoop only gets acquitted on some of the murder counts. And one of the murder counts is a hung jury. And so they decide not to re-prosecute that. But even to this day, they could re-prosecute Snoop. So they've got something to hang over Snoop's head. Because that is murder. There is no statute of limitations on murder. So Snoop's going to pretty much do whatever it is they want him to do. And that's kind of how this group rolls. It rolls with extortion, intimidation. It rolls with drug trafficking out the back door, music out the front door. What do you need the music for? You need the music as the legit money. What do you need the drugs for? You got to do the payola. You got to pay off to get studio time. You got to pay off to get a record played. You got to get it pressed. You got to get it shelf space. And so that's all stuff that happens and has been happening in the record industry since the 40s. Suge didn't invent that game. He was just really good at it. And they had a machine together where they had drugs going out the back door and they had music going out the front door. And that's kind of how Death Row Records was rolling at the time. So Snoop gets off, no problem, right? Snoop's back. he's doing music. Tupac himself, he was made famous by Dan Quayle. Dan Quayle makes Tupac famous. He's at the pulpit and he says there's no place in our society for Tupac Shakur or his music or his lyrics. And that compels him to, or propels him to superstardom. And so Tupac is now an icon. And then in Atlanta, Tupac stumbles upon a young man getting beaten by two men, and he shoots them, and they turn out to be off-duty police officers. And he shoots them both in the ass. He gets arrested for it. Turns out they were drunk and disorderly, and they also had guns that were stolen out of the evidence locker. And so Tupac actually gets off, charges dismissed. And when he gets away with shooting two off-duty police officers, now he is propelled to superstardom. And they hem him up in a rape case because they got to get him off the streets. The cops don't like him. They manufacture this whole thing with Haitian Jack and all that. Haitian Jack's an informant. Catches this case, gets convicted, goes to prison, Dannemora, visited by Suge. You got the people that are at Interscope asking Suge to take Tupac off their hands, and they confuse all the accounting. Tupac can't get his money. He goes on to Death Row Records, gets out of prison, starts laying down tracks. November of 95, the Gary Webb articles come out. The CIA is putting drugs out on the streets of America. And that sends shockwaves through the music industry because the drug trafficking, money laundering operation at Death Row Records, it's got to go. So Suge and Tupac are greenlit because this record label now, in its heyday, it's got to be shut down. It's been greenlit to be shut down and eliminated from the scene. There's still a catalog. There's money in the catalog. But clearly they can't run the drugs out the back door and the records out the front door anymore. And so they got to switch their suppliers. They got to switch. They're not going to get rid of a revenue stream, but they are going to make adjustments to how things work. So it rolls down to Vegas. You got Reggie Wright Jr., who, according to the confession letter, goes to a meeting with a gang summit where there's supposedly peace talks going on, but it's not peace talks. It's talking about how much would it cost to get rid of Suge and Tupac. And that's what's in the confession letter. That gets buried into a file in 1998. Chris Blatchford tries to give it to Vegas. They don't want it. He tries to give it to LAPD. They don't want it. There's no interest in the confession letter. He puts it in his file. And that letter doesn't come out until a meeting with Russell Poole in 2013 and a meeting with me in 2014. And the letter is given to me by journalist Chris Blatchford. And that letter is what propelled the Russell Michael Carlin investigation. And we originally did it with somebody else, and there were just a parting of the ways, let's say. And we'll just leave it at that. But, and that's not really a relevant part of the story. It doesn't matter. But the one thing that you can say is that anybody that has affiliations with the police tried to always steer this investigation away from the police. They tried to steer it away from the thieves that stole the evidence out of the evidence locker. Rafael Perez, David Mack, Kevin Gaines, Sharitha Knight, who, they're mentioned in all this stuff as forces inside of Death Row Records trying to topple Suge and take over the record label. And there's already a move afoot from a much higher level trying to get rid of Suge because he's become a problem. He's a bully. He's a little bit too showy. And there's a lot of heat on the drug industry because you got the CIA coming out and having town halls saying that they have nothing to do with the drug trade. You have Michael Rupert come out and say he's seen the CIA agents out there. You got the Vikings saying that they're tired of having their loads hijacked by the CIA. And so you got this turmoil that's going on in the drug industry at the time Tupac and Suge are targeted. So the school play happens, and anybody who denies what's seen on the MGM as being a school play against Tupac and against Orlando Anderson, who is there standing there waiting to take a beatdown that he was most likely paid to take. And you have Orlando Anderson that was supposedly shot by Compton PD, or that's supposedly shot at Compton PD. So they hate this guy. They're going to set him up. And they do. They set him up. He's at the MGM. He's waiting there. There's the whisper into Tupac's ear. Tupac takes off. A little bit of a fight happens. It's a little bit of a beatdown. But Orlando Anderson has a dislocated shoulder. That is one of those trick shoulders that happened previous to this, and it gets re-injured in that little scuff-up. And it's, 10 or 15 seconds of somebody pounding on you, a bunch of people pounding on you in a beatdown. That could do a lot of damage. He's standing there at the MGM. He walks away with Reggie Wright Jr. You see Reggie Wright Sr. there on the video. He's got a very definitive mark on the back of his neck. It's very identifiable. And you see all the characters that we constantly see in this school play. Now, if you're Reggie Wright Jr. and you were supposed to keep Suge Knight and Tupac safe, you fucked up. And if you're Reggie Wright Jr. and you were meant to kill Suge Knight and Tupac that night, you fucked up. They're not dead. They're both expected to live. Tupac's expected to live. What lawyer would allow a doctor to come out, especially with a high-profile celebrity, and announce that Tupac is supposed to survive? That never happens. It's rare that anybody makes an announcement like that. They must have had a reasonable expectation that Tupac was going to live. They were actually planning to have physical therapy for Tupac in Arizona. They were making arrangements for him to go to physical therapy. So they thoroughly expected Tupac was going to live. And one thing we know about Tupac, he was not going to wake up and be silent about who had shot him. And so there's a real problem if Tupac survives. There's a real problem that Suge survived. The evidence of the MGM beating gets entered into evidence in Suge's case for his probation violation by David Kenner. Now, wait a minute. Why does David Kenner enter that into evidence? It's because he wants to send Suge Knight away to prison so he can steal the wealth of Death Row Records. And Tupac Shakur, he's got to go. And in this time between Tupac and Suge expected to live, you could imagine the panic that's going on inside right-way security. You could imagine the higher-up saying, you're a fuck-up. You're supposed to keep him alive? You're a fuck-up. You're supposed to kill him. You're a fuck-up. Either way, they look at Reggie as the fuck-up. And Reggie is trying to blame Frank Alexander. Frank didn't have his gun. And he tells Frank Alexander not to tell Suge. Why does he tell him not to tell Suge? Well, so 4 days later, they have to prove that they can carry out a hit. And here they are. They block off the street on Mayo. You know where Bobby Finch is going to be because he's waiting for his workout partner. And you got intel about his workout partner. And there he is sitting there in the car. A blue car pulls up, probably a Honda, talks to Bobby Finch for 3 or 4 minutes. And then they open fire on Bobby Finch. Now, he is shot 13 total times, and 11 or 12 bullets hit his body. Does that sound like a gangbanger in a drive-by shooting? Roller said it was a drive-by shooting. Reggie Wright Jr. says, that's a case of mistaken identity. Is it really mistaken identity when for 3 or 4 minutes the shooter talks to Bobby Finch? Bobby Finch was known. He was folklore. He was legend. He had put a Compton PD to sleep that got dragged back to his vehicle and had to be put into his vehicle by his patrol partner. Embarrassing, humiliating. What does Reggie say? If somebody slapped me, I'm going to get him. And that's what happened. But it looks like they also did something else. It's an experience modification. The shooting in Vegas was a fuck-up, a complete and total fuck-up. The shooting of Bobby Finch proves they can actually orchestrate a hit and carry it out. Now, Kevin Hackey talks about how he and Reggie are talking about it a minute or two after it happened. And Reggie already knows about it. Reggie knows all about it. And they're talking about Bobby Finch like he's already dead. But he doesn't die. He lives for 45 minutes. He's at Mayo Hospital, Martin Luther King Hospital, and they crack open his rib cage and massage his heart, trying to get him back to live, to survive, because they think they can save him. But they lose him. He dies. 45 minutes later, 42 minutes after the conversation with Kevin Hackey and Reggie talking about how Bobby Finch is already dead. They're talking about it. And then, of course, we have the experience modification using gecko ammunition to kill Biggie. So you go from the Cadillac shooting wildly, one gun out the top, one gun out the side. You got one that Frank Alexander says that it's a 40 Glock. And you got Suge Knight talking about how he's got a 45 bullet in his skull. You got the confession letter talking about how one shooter was supposed to take out Tupac, and he was deliberate in his aim, according to Gaddafi, like jealousy, like he hated Tupac. And you got the other one who just gets off a couple of rounds, one of which hits Suge. And you got a third shooter whose gun jams, according to the confession letter. And then you have the jump to that complete and total fuck up to Bobby Finch. 13 shots fired, 11 or 12 bullets hit his body. And then you have Biggie Smalls, tight pattern, professional shooter, gecko ammunition. And they want to blame those 2 murders of Bobby Finch and Biggie on gangbangers. And it doesn't look like gangbanger shit. So they try and sell us this bullshit that it's gangbangers in Bobby Finch and in Biggie, but it doesn't look like gangbangers. It looks like the Rampart Scandal cops were involved in some way in both the Bobby Finch murder and in the Biggie murder too. And now we go back to the hospital where you have Tupac expected to live, getting ready to be transferred to physical therapy, making arrangements for that. Doctor coming out and saying that Tupac is expected to live. You have all of this happening at a time when Frank Alexander is refusing to leave Tupac's side. He gets blown up with his pager and Reggie summoning to a meeting over at Suge's house. You have Suge saying recently that Snoop never went to the hospital. But you got Snoop in his own words saying that he saw him lying in the bed. He whispered in his ear, thinking that he got it. And he said he was there when Tupac took his last breaths. Now, how many of you all have ever been at a place where you got one celebrity that's doing something and another celebrity shows up? And if Tupac was laying in the hospital, it's not like he's talking to everybody. So the minute Snoop shows up, everybody goes running over to see Snoop. That leaves a window of opportunity for Tupac to be left alone enough to put something into his IV. Billy Garland says that there were 4 cops that showed up with Snoop's entourage. What do we want to bet that one of those cops was Kevin Gaines? Kevin Gaines was known to roll with Snoop back in the day. Kevin Gaines gets smoked right after the Biggie murder. And so it is likely that Tupac was murdered in the hospital.
About 2 weeks after that, I was contacted by Reggie to go over to Santa Monica Police Department to pick up this firearm.
Hackey says he first showed the handgun to his FBI handlers and then turned it over to Reggie Wright Jr. A month later in Las Vegas, investigators say it was a .40 Glock handgun that killed Tupac Shakur. Hackey believes the murder weapon was the same gun he gave Reggie Wright Jr.
I believe it is.
What up, Ballford family? How y'all doing? Hey, John, you got a lot to cover up, y'all.
You know, we got a lot to cover up.
Puffy was going up the stairs, and he said, I don't care if Tupac died, I don't care if Biggie gotta die, and I don't care if Suge gotta go to prison for the rest of his life.
We got a confession letter on how everything went down and who's responsible.
Now, getting back to Russell was following in the footsteps of his dad, and he was able to work through the LAPD and have all the things that had to be done within the LAPD. He certainly knew the streets very well, and circumstances in his case were far more tragic because he was killed in the line of duty.
They got to be sorry for what they did.
Like I said, I had 2 of the toughest guys for him, and Reggie pulled them off of me. It didn't have to happen. I told him to send 5 guys from the club to there, and they never sent nobody.
Suge was set up.
I'm like, cuz, you going to Vegas? You going to Vegas, cuz? They finna try to do something to me.
I mean, murder is pretty simple. The first person you go after is the spouse.
Perez and them was all involved. They were trying to kill me too, but see, because Perez and Reg was good friends, and Perez and Sarita and Reg is great friends, and so all those 3 together was trying to plot.
Why would I want a paper trail when I never brought him around nowhere? So if I'm gonna hide him in secret, you think I'm gonna let somebody catch a paper trail? They were paid cash by Snoop.
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
It was a murder for hire hit.
If it was an actual shooting in Vegas, it's on camera in Vegas.
It's witnesses that said they gave no sex to kill me. So I knew it was cameras everywhere in Vegas because I went to UNLV.
All of the corners in Vegas was equipped with cameras.
Those guys you go back and watch the film, they was already stalking Pac, watching him. So that just took the iceberg when something happened. But there was a plan already to do something to him.
How come Reggie is Suge's bodyguard and he wasn't with Suge?
We went to Las Vegas Metro in '97. After Biggie was killed, I think there's got to be a connection between the two. The politicians said they don't want to solve it, so they told the investigators put it up on the shelf.
I'm quite sure if they saw the first one, they would saw the second one because it's the same circle of people.
You got a lot to cover up, y'all.
Freudian slip.
You got a lot to cover up.
Orlando wasn't even the shooter, you know? He was actually a good kid too, you know?
Supposedly there's a hit on Suge.
Wounds are life-threatening, but serious, not in critical condition at this time. And the person, as you are already aware, who was the passenger in this vehicle is a known rap performer by the name of Tupac Shakur.
With Tupac, I still got a 45 bullet into my skull.
We've been informed that doctors have told the family members that they expect the rap star to once again recover from his injuries.
They know who was going on behind all that stuff, you know? How much would it cost to get rid of Suge? They said, what you mean by get rid of him? He said, kill him.
They put a hit on Suge.
Reggie's dad told me that. Well, he said, Michael, if anything happened to Suge, this is what he told me. Anything happened to Suge, Reggie would run the majority of the company.
It's the same people, same circle of people. Have nothing to do with me, you know?
Treat it on the paper. Yeah, Reggie would carry most of the burden.
It come from because they weren't the ownership of my company.
Hey, John, you got a lot to cover up, y'all.
Run DMC rocked that motherfucker that night, man. Run DMC performed that night, you know. Everybody knew the conditions, what was going on. They tried to keep everybody calm, and Run DMC went on up and performed that night, man, yeah. I hung out with them all night in the VIP room. It was shit, man. They'll never forget that night. That was me, Jay, DMC, and Ron just in the VIP room where Reggie Wright came in a couple of times telling them, you know, the conditions of what was going on. But
the head of gangs and homicide from the Compton PD is Reggie Wright Sr., and the head of security at Death Row is Reggie Wright Jr.
The vice president on TV talking about taking my record off the shelves. Police, you know, every time they see me, they think I'm a cop killer.
it was an assassination attempt on Suge in Las Vegas, who would have everything to gain.
I could have jumped out on his ass in Vegas, but it was killing me. But Snoop was like, hold on, don't fuck this up. So
I was told it was an operation. It was a planned assassination.
How come Reggie is Suge's bodyguard and he wasn't with Suge?
He wanted to be Suge Knight so bad.
Where stuff really come from, it come from because they weren't the ownership of my company.
Police did not follow up on the most basic lead.
Just happened to have officers in the right spot at the right time, were able to radio ahead.
The cops that they trying to connect to Death Row were never hired on Death Row.
He had no relationship with any police officers.
When I got shot, it was 37 cameras.
All the artists at Death Row was willing to come with me.
There's other rappers who wanted Suge taken out.
I'm scared of no one.
My pitch was to the record labels and to the company was to have police officers that could be good witnesses and for the inmates.
You crooked ass cop.
I didn't need to take from niggas. I was institutionalized a motherfucker. If I felt threatened by anybody, you want to know the real. Nigga would have went to jail for a long time fucking with me.
Get everything you deserve.
Perez and Sarita and Reg is great friends, and so all those three together was trying to plot.
You always will tell you, those are Reggie people.
Suge didn't let none of my security ride with me, because I feel like they finna try to do something to me.
Police corruption cannot exist. Cannot exist unless it is condoned and tolerated by upper police management.
Greg Kading is out. His lawyer won't let him do it.
You crooked ass cop.
Could it be that the police department had something to do with Tupac's murder?
The Compton killings that occurred thereafter after Tupac was shot was just a diversion to make, general public, law enforcement believe it was a blood Crip thing. When indeed, it was all orchestrated.
And that's what happened. Our lives was in jeopardy.
In the hospital there, something wasn't right.
Situation was, me and Pac had a little falling out a day or two before that in New York.
Now, you don't take no ass whooping like that unless something's up. Unless the goose is cooked.
Orlando wasn't even a shooter, He was actually a good kid, too,
Now, Orlando Anderson, here he is the only Southside Crip standing in a casino. He was planetary.
Wow, the last time I saw him, he was laying in the bed, holding on to his last breath.
Yeah, John, we got a lot to cover up.
Nobody cared about Pac having the right amount of security at all, period.
No one cared.
It was not mentioned at all.
No one cared. And every time I ask Reggie, he gets really defensive. Told you in the hospital there, something wasn't right.
Interfering with the Vegas case. He's a lieutenant in Compton, LVMPD, whatever. Interfering with the Vegas case.
Jimmy is close personal friends with Reggie Wright Sr.
Because Pop, that weekend before he went, was talking about pulling away from the labels and starting their own.
And let's go and try to be a distributor on our own. At that time, it was 6 majors, and he was trying to be number 7. I remember he was talking about calling it Lucky 7.
We don't want that, man. It's enough brothers out here dying already.
Yeah, John, y'all got a lot to cover up. Y'all motherfuckers got Pac. Do y'all know how much that hurts our hearts?
Anybody that ever put their hands on me, I'll tell you, might not get you that day, but you're gonna get got.